On to the lightweight representative from Team GB 2016 Rio Olympics. Lightweight as a professional initially, he's since made the bizarre change. He actually picked up the British title as a lightweight, some very good domestic wins, beating the likes of Andy Townend, Gavin Gwynn at lightweight, and they're not to be sniffed at. Again, if you're a young, decent prospect, and I want to reiterate this because I feel that when it's Matchroom in particular, when they sign an Olympian, there's a lot of hype and a lot of promotional push behind them, that people expect them all to be on this sort of Lomachenko trajectory of a couple of fights, 5 fights, getting for a British title, 10 fights European, and beyond that, the world honours by the time they've had, like Cordina has, 14 fights or so. And it's unrealistic. It's not necessarily fair. So for someone, again, with just 14 fights, obviously he had fewer than that when he won the British title, it's a hell of an achievement. He's done exceptionally well to get that point of view. And I think a lot of fans see the British as a sort of minimum for these guys. And I mentioned that earlier in this piece. I understand that because they're, in theory, amongst the best amateurs in the world, so they should be getting in for world titles, but that's not necessarily always going to be the case. And I feel really hard to criticise Cordina for only having won that British title so far. This is, again, someone who's not had that many fights as a professional. He's come back, as I said, winning the lightweight title, and then in his very next outing made that decision to drop down to super feather. So we've talked already, or I've talked about Kelly, Fowler. They've lost and then made the decision to go up in weight. That seems to be a very common thing in boxing. They're looking for any sort of, not excuse, but any reason or any factor that might have contributed to the loss rather than being beaten by the better man. It's very hard for boxers to just admit that and move on. There has to be this inquest, there has to be digging into what exactly has gone wrong, what can I do to tweak my performance and to improve myself the next time out. So for Cordina to come off winning the British title and then sit down with his team and think, actually, I'm going to be even better at a lower weight, it's an interesting development. And again, he's fought, obviously he's beaten everyone he's boxed. So to then go down to super feather and continue that momentum. He's one who I think suffered a little with the pandemic and issues outside the ring, not been as active since, but come back recently towards the end of last year, and I think the Conor Benn undercard picked up another win. These sort of international level fights, they're really hard to judge because unless you're an encyclopedic knowledge or encyclopedic expert of boxing, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know a lot about his recent opponents, but he's picked up the wins. He's doing what needs to be done, and I think coming into 2022, he's going to want to be active. He's going to want to get out as often as possible, and hopefully make that progression. I think a European title shot is going to be something that is in the works for Joe Cordina, something that we'll look to see him working towards world level, whether it's actually sort of boxing for the European title or going down one of the sanctioning body routes, something more directly following on from some of these international fights that he's had, these international titles he's picked up, and positioning himself at world level. But again, one fighter who's done nothing wrong so far, and it feels very, very critical and nitpicking to sort of pick him up on the lack of momentum he's had and the lack of activity he's had, because when he's been in the ring, he has done the business so far. And with that, I am going to grant Joe Cordina a B.